Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff, and welcome to another first impressions video. And in this video we'll be looking at the Airfix HMS Illustrious in 1:350 scale. So this model kit comes with a couple of brushes, 15 paints, a couple of tubes of glue, and it's the third rebox of the kit that was originally released in 2010. So the box has an absolutely stunning picture of HMS Illustrious at sea, or Lusty as she was referred to by the crew. On this end we have a little bit of history about the ship, tells you where it was built and the year it was launched and so on and so forth. We have a profile picture with some information about the kit. Tells you that it's just over ½ meter long, and that there's 276 parts, and that it's a skill level 3. I can't remember how many flying hours you got. I would imagine it was a 3 or a 4. So yeah, this is the latest Rebox version, so it won't be as crisp a mould as the first edition. But essentially it's the same kit, just reboxed. So let's have a look at what we get in the box. We then come to the instructions, and these are the older format instructions before they started using colour more recently. So we have a black and white photograph of the box art on the top, and it tells you a little bit about her history again. I think it's the same as what was on the box. Then you have the study the instructions information and the key. Then we come to depictions of the sprues. So you've got your parts list, and then we are landscape for the first step. Construction of the deck first. So we have options around whether the elevators are going to be up or down or in the middle. You've got paint instructions being shouted out. So yeah, building up that deck in the first instance, and then we go back to portrait for step 2. And interestingly, we're putting some superstructure on that deck. So basically we've got the hanger walls have been put in by that point. So that little 3 there is telling you that this is from step 3, and then you're adding that to the underside of the deck. I think, fairly sure that's the underside. Then as we go to step 6, we're adding more detail in there. So we've got ship's boats, the 2 different sizes of dirigible. We've got lockers of some description, equipment lockers, roofs and so on and so forth. There's our 2 boats. They seem to be telling you to paint them all one colour, which isn't correct, so that's been dumbed down a little bit. And then yeah, just continuing to build up all those little compartments that we're going to be able to see once the deck is fitted. So that's step 8 done. Then step 9, we're back to landscape. Right, so we have the cranes for the ship's boats going into the roofs, and then the roofs, yeah, it is the roof, and then the roofs being attached. So yeah, all very good. Nice to see that we've got some reasonably good detail below. Then as we get to 10, back to portrait, we're building up a centre deck and building that the right way up, and then obviously the upper deck will go, the flight deck will go on top. So it's putting that internal deck in, which then allows us to have I think 1/2 of the hull attached to the deck there. So yeah, 3 steps to attach the hull. We flip him over, step 13, and we're marrying up the second half of the hull. Looks like it could be a reasonably tricky assembly because there's no supporting struts or anything like that, giving this any rigidity at this stage. You've got no bottom of the hull here. If I show you, the bottom of the hull is open. You've got no transom, so it's all could be all a little bit floppy maybe. So it'd be interesting to see how rigid that is and how easy that is to put together. And we're already at step 16, and then we're doing the superstructure. And you know, it's interesting that all of that superstructure, if that was trumpeter, you know, there's no way that would be 2 parts. But that's pretty much almost the entirety of the base of the island clicked together in 2 parts, done. So so the build time on this, even though it's a big model, isn't going to be excessive. Then we've got the funnel bridge superstructure being put together. I'm not sure if we've got open windows or solid windows. Certainly on the Type 45 they were open. I would like it if they were. And then so we're building all that on and then adding it together. And then end bulkheads. That worries me. It looks like a wedge, so we might want to replace some of those maybe. Some plastic card. Then we flip over and we're at step 36. Radar arrays going on, various other bits and pieces, support structure, and interestingly we're not putting the transom on until step 41. And then we have a roof to go on this open area here, and we have a deck that goes on the inside of the bow before the flight deck goes on, which is basically the wet deck with the anchors. Then at step 45 we are putting this side bulkhead piece in onto the main flight deck, so that goes against the side of the ski jump there, which is attached before we put the main flight deck on. So we've built up quite all the interior parts, should be all painted now. Then we've got an option there of keeping a waterline, so they must think she's fairly rigid at this point, or adding the lower hull. And as you can see, really there's not a lot of her under the water. Then we build the stand, and then we're building up the prop shafts and bits and pieces. If we flip her over, we've got a sonar bulge. You've got accurately depicted screws. How well moulded they are will be interesting to see. And then all of that being... and then we start detailing that. So we've got the klaxons, radars, of different types, all sorts of little domes and the radar dishes. The inner detail of the funnel there. More domes, radar domes going on there. Yeah, more stuff going on to that radar mast. I'm just wondering if that's a duplication. Yeah, step 67, we add 2 part 33Ds, which are these 2 round pieces that are going into the funnel there. And step 72, we're adding 2 part 33Ds into the funnel. So we seem to have a duplicated step there. That's interesting. Then we've got aerials, various aerials going on of different types. Quite a lot of detail there, but my experience on the Type 45 was these were quite heavily overscale, so thinning them down and replacing them with wire is probably desirable. So yeah, all sorts of arrays there. I'm being silly. We've got 2 funnels, so it's not a duplication, it's 2 funnels. Okay. Step 81, we're building up davits and then installing them. Ship's boats, they want you to put some thread through the base of the boat. I'm not going to be doing that. What look like some form of anti-aircraft armament or something like that. And then as we flip over, we've got cranes. There's a phalanx being fitted. Then we've got the main bow gun, and then we have some of the smaller parts going in. Anchors, got some ladders and more weaponry. What look like life rafts or something of that nature. Yeah, they are the life raft canisters going on. Quite a few of those, as you would imagine. Big ship, a lot of crew. So we're now at step 105, and we're looking at the aircraft, and they give you quite a compliment here. So building up the Harrier, different helicopters there, and you've got the options for open and closed rotors. We've got some deck vehicles, which is nice to see, cranes and tugs, and it's showing you how these tugs associate with the different aircraft. And then gives you sort of an idea of where you could put them. So 113 steps in total. So on the sprue here we have the display stand, which is quite big in itself. You can see, it's a long old stand. So we has built-in name plaques. The end pieces just need to be attached, which can't see her on this sprue. We have the 2 hull sides. If we look on the inside, you can see this is the mounting point for the lower deck. I'll be interested to see whether you can put the deck in and then put these parts in on top. What we have is quite a lot of grills. We've got the openings for the various different areas of the ship that are exposed on the outside. There is no panel lines particularly, but also there doesn't appear to be much in the way of sink, which is nice. And the vent detail is good and crisp. And then we have some external deck parts and stern plate there, which all looks right and accurate. It's got the lip on it, as it should have. So yeah, very nice. Let's flip that over. So here we have what would be a steel deck, and we've got some horrible ejector pin marks in there. Ejector pinned and flashed. So yeah, and quite a lot of ejector pin marks on this underside of this walkway here. Now we've got all the gussets on there. They look a bit thick and oversized, to be honest. So we might want to remove those and replace those with plastic card, possibly. Now this is the outside surface detail of the ski jump, and this is the side that's mainly not got detail on, and so it's got all the ejector pin marks. But these 2 parts here, the bit you're going to see is facing this way. So why they didn't design it so that it was facing this way and avoid the ejector pin marks, I don't know. But as a result, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ejector pin marks to clean up, which won't be easy given their locations. All in all, not too bad. Sprue B is the same size as sprue A. What we have here is the lower deck that builds the hanger structure on. You can see we've got some ship's chocks there, and these are the bottoms of the elevators, which have some detail on, which is quite interesting. It means that if the elevator's up, you can see underneath, and yeah, that's interesting. More ship's chocks there, and then on this side here we have the upper deck. So we have a small amount of detail, some like tie down points, I guess they are, running around here. We've got some grills there. That's the mount for the bow gun. Then this rectangle is the location point for the island, but otherwise the deck is totally smooth and featureless, and that's a little bit disappointing. Fortunately, there's a lot of paint marks on here which will break the deck up and make it look a bit more animated. Then we have, these are two walkways, and what's noticeable is the top of the walkways have no texture. I don't know whether that is accurate or not, quite possibly is. And then we've got a lot of gussets again, all of them looking a little bit too thick. It's a lot of gussets to replace. Then we have the two large internal walls for the hangar, which has a walkway there. We've got some internal ladders, bits and pieces. It's not overly detailed, but you've got the ribbed structure of the bulkheads, which is nice, and there is some cabling detail and air conditioning trunking. Okay, sprue C is the last of the huge sprues, and all of these sprues came in one massive bag, as Airfix tend to do. And if I move back to here, we can start with, these are the ends of the display stand. We have another chimney here, and then dimensionally it all looks beautifully correct and accurate, and knowing Airfix it will be. But there's not much else in the way of detail other than the ventilation points. We've got various different platforms here, and I am seeing, it's not flash, it's just heavy seams. So we've got a number of bulkheads there. We've got the lower hull, which, because of the way it's been done, has some heavy connection points to clean up, but there is no centre seam to clean up. So actually, in terms of clean up, it will be easier than many ship kits. Then we have the two sides of the island, and there's quite a bit of detail on there. We've got ladders, we've got wiring, we've got watertight doors, hose reels, ventilation exits. So it is nicely detailed in the same way as the Type 45 was. And then here is the various bridge windows, and they're all open, which is lovely. And then we have the mast, and that was the structure that went at the stern on the lower deck. And then if we flip her over, we've got the various different roofs and bits and pieces for all of those buildings that face out towards the ocean through the hull. And then we've got the bulkheads for those, and again there's lots of detail in them. There's also some ejector pin marks, but yeah, there's some very nice detail in there. Obviously it won't be as busy as the real thing, but they've not ignored the fact that you are going to see in there, and they've given you different wall textures and pretty ugly looking watertight doors that are all different sizes and dimensions, but there you go. But there is quite a lot of detail, enough there to make it look busy, give it a bit of a wash and make them pop out. It will look alright. Lower hull, which is an option if you wish. And we've got the funnels. See, there's some really nice detail, plenty of detail on the island. There's lots of framework detail on those, and then you get to these bulkheads, and you can see, get the light right, let me just adjust the light. See, there's lots of detail on there. Okay, sprue D. It's allowed me to get the camera back to its more normal position. We have a lot of parts on here. Okay, so we've got stabilizers which have a number of different location points and nubs, so a bit of careful cleanup, but they look pretty good. Then we've got some cranes there. The hooks look quite heavy. The screws, they're a bit thick, but actually they don't look too bad. Then we get to these parts, and you can see what I mean about the sort of the whip aerials. They are well, they're as thick as the prop shaft, so no, but we need to replace those. So these are the lights, the sort of launch lights, if you like. Jack staffs also look a bit heavy, but the ship's boats look really nice. We've got a really nice texture on those, texture on the hull. Windows are solid, but they are a good shape. So there's actually quite a few detail parts there, and that ship's boat's as good as Tamiya would do. Lots and lots of parts. And the last plastic sprue is E, and that has the aircraft on. Now I think you could buy these separate once upon a time and get additional aircraft. So we've got Merlins, Sea King, Harrier, I think, on there. And looking at this, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Harriers and 4 helicopters, so 8 aircraft all in all. Solid windows, so you have to paint them black or dark grey or whatever. But actually, there's lots of panel lines. There's lots and lots of detail on the aircraft. It's a bit heavy. So the bag of paints and glues, you can see I've not opened it. I'm imagining most of these paints are probably gone solid. I might be wrong. A bit of a shake and they might be okay. The brushes will be alright, of course. So next we have the decals, and let's see. There's a lot of decals there, most of which are to do with the deck markings. And there is quite a lot of carrier film on these. Yeah, you may want to look at doing some of these slightly differently and maybe masking paint stripes on rather than some of these big boxes of carrier film. So we have lots and lots of deck markings. They all look nicely done. They're a little bit thick. I don't believe them to be cartographed. Doesn't say that they are. It's probably before that period of time. But the markings look okay. Now, my understanding is the positioning of the markings is incorrect. So you need to do some references. but how far they are from being correct, I don't know. I've not done any reference around that. Got two flags, the ensign and the Union Jack. It's a jack when it's on a ship. And then we've got lots of little decals here for the aircraft and some warning signs and bits and pieces. So a nice set of decals. What I can't see is any depth markings. I'm not sure if it's those or not. We'll have a look in a minute when we look at the positioning sheet. But yeah, everything else that we should have, a name and everything is there, so they don't look too bad at all. Nice collection of decals there. And finally, we have the paint chart. So it's a separate sheet in colour, which is nice because the rest of the instructions weren't. So it's shouting out all the various different paints there. And these little red boxes are all the decals, so you can see a lot of decals, which suits me down to the ground because I love putting decals on. So yeah, you've got pennant number, flag positions, ship's name, and then you've got all of these various depth markings. Looks alright, that. Then we have aftermarket. So there are 3 different companies that did photo etch for the Illustrious. Edward did a big Ed. White Ensign Models did a set, and then Atlantic Models did a set. Now, for those of you that do not know, Peter Hall is the person that designed all of the White Ensign Models etch. And then obviously White Ensign Models stopped trading and the company got broke up into different elements. So the paints went one way and the etch went to Tom's Model Works, is it? In America. And they now do the etch. So there wasn't a need for Peter to develop any more etch. So he went and set up his own business, and he's released some of the original White Ensign Model resin kits and some of his own, and they are to an extremely high standard. And he has reworked some of the White Ensign etch sets and actually improved on them. So when you can get an etch set from Atlantic Models that you can also get from White Ensign Models, it's always worth getting the Atlantic Models version because you'll probably find it's been updated. And certainly that was the case on the Type 45. It had some additional bits and some improved bits. And Atlantic Models are my favourite etch brand for ship etch. However, in this instance, as you can see, I decided to go with Atlantic, and I didn't get the big Ed, I got the superstructure. So there will be some duplications, but I think there is also some additional stuff. So let's start with the Edward etch. So smokestacks on the funnels, and we've got a really nice radar to replace the heavy plastic one. So we're going to have to do some curving and bending and all that good stuff. But there's some lovely detail there. And then on the second fret, we've got railings, but this is railings for the superstructure. There is another separate railing set which would have been in the big Ed set, which I didn't need because I had railings on the Atlantic Models. But you do get lots of watertight doors, which look better than the plastic moulded ones, and they're certainly thinner. You get all sorts of bits of safety nets and other bits of structure we will have a look at a minute in the instructions. And these are some deck nets as well, which are nice to see, though ever so slightly damaged. Be interesting to see if we have those in the Atlantic set as well. And there's some cable reels and some form of starfish there as well. So lots of little bits and pieces there. There's a lot of reds there, which means there's a lot of stuff being removed. Mainly watertight doors, but the ventilation and bits and pieces like that. So we'll have to have a look at reference pictures and see if that becomes less realistic because it's raised on the surface. Handrails and yard arm spreaders to go on the funnels, which just are not included in the kit. More ladders and gantries, which is nice to see. Atlantic Models actually provide two different etch sets for this, which you can buy separately, and the reason why they've done that is because they've done the air wing set separately, because you could buy additional air wing sets, so you might need more than one. So they've separated it so you can buy into as many of these as you need, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. But this is the main set for her. And you can see it's a large fret of material, and it needs handling with an awful lot of care to stop any damage. But the main thing that we've got on here is loads and loads of replacement gussets. So that's going to make my life a lot easier. No plastic card, we can use etch. So thank you, Mr. Atlantic. And then we have all the nets that go around the flight deck, which can be which are sewed up and then collapsed down fraction stations. Again, we have another aerial, so I've got 2 bites of the radar, I should say, so I've got 2 bites of the cherry there. And we have what I would say is a much finer and better representation of the logo that goes on the funnel. We've got all the ship's railings there, and they're very finely done, and they're very delicate. You can see how big some of this netting is, and it's very finely rendered. And I'm actually wondering if some of this is replacing the decks. We'll have a look at the instructions in a minute. So some of the gangways that go around the outside of the ship. We've definitely got yard arms. We've got detail for the cranes, which wasn't included in the Edwards set. But what we've not got is watertight doors, which we have got on the Edwards set. So you can see how the two complemented each other. And then we have what looks like some internal bulkheads, and what also look like quite a lot of raft stowage points, and a load more cable reels. Okay, let's have a look at the instructions and see what we've actually got in there. So the usual format for Atlantic instructions, it talks you through what you've got and some ways of working, and then it gives you a large format fret diagram with all the individual parts numbered, so nice and easy to find all your parts when you're building it. Then all those parts are listed, so you know exactly what they are. So by the time I've finished building this, I'll know what all those radars are called. We've got some nice little detail to go on the roof of the bridge, which you didn't see in the Edwards set. What they have done is given you the heights of the platform, so that's really helpful. You can see there they've given you all the platform heights. So your photo etch is very thin, the platform on the kit is very thick, and you're filling the hole, and you don't know whether the platform should be at the bottom of that hole or the top of that hole or the middle of the hole. So having the measurements really helps you. It means you will get them all spot on. So another big thumbs up for Atlantic. As I suspected, those big, heavy, thick plastic gangways with all the ejector pin marks and big, thick, we're just replacing those with photo etch. So that is much better. There are some kit parts going in there, but we're using photo etch. So we've got texture on the decks, and we've got gussets that look appropriate thickness. That's good. We have the 2005 fit deck positions, which includes all of the positions for your decals. So it was Peter Hall that told me that the decal positions were wrong on the Airfix kit when I was chatting to him about it, because he does decals as well, and he actually painted the lines in. So that might be what we end up doing. So the other Atlantic etch set, which deals with the flight deck areas and aircraft fittings, largely taken up by the rotors. So the etch rotors, exactly the same as the ones used for the Type 45. They're much thinner, so they look a bit more realistic. You can put that little bow into them as they sit there, and then you've got he's got photo etched tugs there. Now I've got some spares from the Type 45, so I can do some additional ones as well. I think I might even have a couple of spare helicopters, so I've got some more bits and pieces I can add. But yeah, so you've got main rotors, tail rotors, some access ladders and various bits and pieces. So let's have a look at the instructions. So the instructions are in a slightly different format because they're smaller. You've got the same basic, this is the fret, all numbered, and it lists what all the parts are, and then each one has its own build sequence. So, and it tells you what they are. So hydraulic pressure supply rig. We have the details for the Harriers. So we have the little wingtip wheels and the little sort of stabilizers, if you like, and some other little detail going on there. I think replacement fins for the heavy plastic ones, and get yourself some plastic rod and make yourself some rockets. That's brilliant. Torpedo trolley, missile trolley, sidewinder missile assembly, forklift truck, that's lovely, and access ladders for the Harriers. So you can make the aircraft area look really busy if you wish. So what are my first impressions? Okay, let's deal with subject matter first. HMS Illustrious had a long and loving relationship with the Royal Navy. Obviously, first pressed into action for the Falklands in 1982, and officially saw service before she was commissioned, as they brought forward her build time by 2 or 3 months just to get her down to the Falklands, and then she was commissioned the following year. So subject matter, 10 out of 10. It's a lovely looking aircraft carrier, and one that carries a lot of affection for people. She was our last aircraft carrier in service until the Queen Elizabeth II. We had a bit of a gap without aircraft carriers. I would like to have seen her turned into some form of museum or something like that, but yeah, scrapped she was, I believe. So I think she was scrapped in Turkey, as my memory serves. Airfix have done a fairly decent stab at the kit. What I would say is, because it's Airfix, I know that dimensionally you're going to be pretty much bob on. There is detail where you want there to be detail. There is simplified construction wherever they can simplify the construction. I like the fact that you get a waterline version and not just a full hull version. I think there is obviously some of the historic Airfix issues that we don't get at them anymore. But at the time they were making this, we were at the back end of still having those issues, and it looks like that we've got some warped hull sides. How problematic that'll be, we won't know till we're building it. There is some detail that's clearly overscale and a little bit heavy, but most of it is done well and is nice. It's a little bit simplified. It's more simple than a trumpeter kit would be, for example, and certainly a Tamiya kit would be. But what they have done is given you the main framework. There is no photo etch, but Airfix generally don't, because they won't like to keep the age range for the kit down. They've given you a good array of aircraft, and they have given you a huge array of decals to try and make the ship look as authentic as possible. I think straight out of the box you can build a good, simple representation of the ship. It's a good size kit. The formation of the parts, a lot of the parts are soft moulded, so they're a bit rounded off, and the detail is not as crisp as it could be. It doesn't stand up against other ship model companies at this moment in time. In terms of the detail of the parts, because you've got that massive deck that's got no detail on, and you've got the gantries around the side that are totally smooth and got no detail on, I have to say 5 out of 10 for detail level. I think the hull isn't too bad. They've put the basic detail in, and under a little bit of weathering, I think it'll come out okay. Overall, I'm going to say she's a 6.5 as a kit. So you're going to go into this build expecting to have to do a little bit of manipulation of the kit to get it to fit. You're going to have some cleanup. We didn't see masses of flash. We didn't see any sink. We saw some ejector pin marks, but some of those get removed by the etch. But I have to take the kit as it is and as it's intended to be built. And there is a lot of oversized parts and some quite a lot of ejector pin marks in the wrong places. Hope that was helpful, gave you an insight of what you get. Thank you for looking in. Take care, and I will see you soon.